Hey, it's Tim, Pickup Truck Plus SUV Talk, and man, we got a show for you guys tonight. I am fired up. We got 5-foot wonder from Chicago, Jill Simonello. We have from Ohio, where it's storming like dogs and cats. We have Keith from Trigger Happy, and we have Kyle Conover from Connor. Why am I saying it wrong? From Auto Spec Studios. He's in Fort Collins, Colorado, enjoying the sunset going on down there. I'm a little fired up because tomorrow morning I leave for 4 a.m. on a flight to put my ass in the sand and a cold drink in my hand. So I'm a little excited about that. We have a great show for you guys. I got to tell you what, we switched to software a couple weeks ago, and we have just had a great time switching to software, and it's been fantastic. So I actually rearranged the show because Keith is in Ohio. I want to keep with his time zone a little bit. So we're going to talk about Tundra wastegate first. We're going to talk about EV stuff with Kyle next. And we're going to talk, and Kyle, welcome to jump in anytime. Jill is going to be there with her fiery temper going off and stuff, as per usual. She's got 5-foot wonder, but full of spit and vinegar. So,
spit and vinegar.
Again, stuff in my head. I'm just telling you guys, I'm excited. I'm going on vacation. It's finally going to be sunny and warm, and so that's what's going on. So we have so much cool stuff going on. I want to hop in to Keith first. So we're going to talk about the Tundra wastegate issue, talk about the EVs. We're going to talk about Chicago Auto Show as well, and our thoughts. I know Kyle was there too. Maybe hop in, give us some thoughts there too. So Keith, let's start with you. You have a YouTube channel, but I want to before that, I want to talk about your Tundra because you've had, let's just say, a less than ideal ownership experience so far. So for those who don't know, who are living under the rock for the last 6 months, right? Kind of give us some idea of who you are and kind of the background of what's going on with your truck.
Sure. So, I'm a part-time YouTuber, hadn't made a video in like a year. So Toyota announces the new Tundra. I'm a Toyota fanboy, right? And I remember my son and I we're on vacation, and when the Toyota Tundra announcement came out, I was like, all right, as soon as we get back from vacation, I'm calling the dealer, I'm putting an order in. I mean, that's how excited I was for this truck. And I had a 2018 Tundra, loved it. And, in this market, it was worth crazy money. So it was a good time for me to trade up anyway. So put my, order in with a couple different dealers, and basically first one to call me was going to get my business. And so I got a call mid-December. Hey, we've got our allocations, should be available, right around New Year's. So picked it up the 3rd of January and had it about a week, and the problem started. So had 300 miles on it when the first check engine light came on. And, I just got the truck back Tuesday, so 2 days ago, after 36 days in the shop. So it's been, interesting. And, I've learned a lot about the auto industry. I'm not a car guy. Like I said, I hadn't made a video for a long time. I'm just an average consumer. This was my 13th Toyota, so I'm not an impartial person. I'm not out reviewing cars on a regular basis. I'm just, I'm a Toyota guy that loves Toyotas, and 13th Toyota, and I expected it to be like all my other Toyota experiences, which were outstanding. Never had a warranty issue on any of them, and I put quite a few miles on. So this was a little different than what I'm used to from Toyota.
So you just got it back. So the big question is, you're making payments in a truck that you don't have. I mean, that's a little frustrating, right? But so, I mean, you had the wastegate issue, right? So the check engine light comes on, you take it to the dealer, and the dealer is going to be, okay, dealers are hit or miss. Let's say it nicely like that. And 36 days in the shop. And so people don't understand, the wastegate is a part on the back of the turbo, allows exhaust gases to open and close. That's kind of how the turbo works. And from Toyota's standpoint, they were saying it's a supplier issue, and they were saying that's the biggest issue. Now, I know you and I have talked offline several times about this, because you're right. It is a complex situation and a complex problem, and people are talking about a major recall from Toyota because of this problem, and there's also what's going on. And I've been in talks with the Toyota corporate on this as well. So from your standpoint, I mean, your big frustration points were, A, communication was, let's just say, not awesome.
subpar at best. Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to nicely say this.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, you had some really poor communication from your dealer, and then you had no communication basically from corporate, and you're left wondering what the heck's going on. Your truck's in the
Yep.
shop, brand new truck, what's going on? And so, um, we've talked a little bit. You've made some videos, which I thought the videos were fantastic because it was from a
Thanks.
straight owner viewpoint, and that's exactly what people need to see is you tried to drive your truck and enjoy it, and you had this problem. So I know you've done a lot more social media on this than maybe you've ever planned in your life. I know I spend more time on social media than I actually want to ever in my life.
Mm-hmm.
But from your understanding of it, when you've talked to other owners and people on your channel, how big do you see this problem being?
So I'll back up one a little bit. So you can, I've made, I believe, 4 videos on this, and you can kind of see the evolution of me as an owner here dealing with this. So at first it was rage, it was anger, and the first video is like, heck with this truck, I don't want this lemon, I'm done. And I've kind of mellowed out a little bit, and as I understood the car industry and learned a little bit about how things work, and maybe my expectations were a little too high for things, but it's yeah. My issue's been communication with everything, and I think there's really no way to know how big this issue is. I think it might be bigger than some people originally thought, but I don't think it's as big as I originally thought.
Okay.
So, I think my original thought was, because when something like this happens and I throw it up there on social media and a lot of people respond, my original thought was, we might have like 8 or 10% of trucks that have this problem. But as it's went on, I think what it is it might have been 8 or 10% of trucks that were built during a 3 or 4 day period. So, all those trucks hit the market at the same time, and then you see this big influx of, I've got the problem, I've got the problem, I've got the problem. And I'm not so sure if it was a huge issue or not. Because again, I don't think anybody really knows other than Toyota, and they haven't really told us. But, I think that's what's happened. It was a bad batch of parts at a very specific time, I think. And, they all hit, and every single person had in that window of between 100 and maybe 1,000 miles. All those went bad at the same time. So it just all blew up on social media at the same time. And I think that's why I thought it was bigger than it really may be. But, I'm not sure. So
it's a very interesting issue. And it's something that, obviously Toyota doesn't want to happen. I mean, no brand wants this to happen, right? They want to have a new truck come out and there's no initial problems and everybody loves the truck. And so, you have the fact that Toyota's state their, put their flag in the sand that their reliability is their biggest thing, and then they have a problem. I mean, that's not great, right? And then you have the new engine, right? And so that's always questions, right? So I think people don't like the twin turbo V6s for a variety of honest reasons, and that's fine. But they want something to fail. And so we were talking about it, and I have actually hammered Toyota about it quite a bit about this. And what's interesting from our viewpoint, I guess I'm going to say is ours as a journalist, I'm going to include Jill in this too, is that automakers typically don't respond to issues like this. And the reason why is because until they do a recall, they really don't give out numbers, and they really don't have they don't talk about these issues. So like, I mean, people want me to get, for example, like I told you, I mean, I talked to Toyota Corporate and they said, well, we can put an engineer on your video. They're willing to put an engineer in the video, but the engineer doesn't really have anything to say.
Right.
Bad batch of parts are coming in. I mean, the biggest complaint of this whole issue is that it really comes down to the fact that you can't get parts. So for example, 36 days in the shop, 36 days that you had to watch my videos on my truck and you had to shed a tear as you saw me driving around a new truck and you couldn't do anything about it.
Yeah. I wouldn't even watch them. Like I couldn't. My son would have them on. I'm like, no, turn it off. Until we get ours back, I'm not watching any more Tundra videos until mine is back in the garage.
Right. I mean,
so I got to catch up with your stuff.
Yeah. So. I mean, you're obviously pissed off about that. I mean, and
yeah.
I appreciate that because I tell people all the time, like I buy first generation of stuff because I want the problems. Because if I can take whatever virtual megaphone I have and shine a light in that, in the faces, I will help get things resolved, or we get a better vehicle from it. I mean, it's kind of a weird way to say it, but I want the problems because it gets you a better vehicle. So I've been talking to Toyota about this quite a bit, and Toyota officially can't say a statement. They're trying, but as corporations go, and if you work in I think it's a mom and pop insurance company, but
Yep.
you probably
No,
don't.
it's a large insurance company.
Right.
But I'm an independent insurance agent,
Right.
small guy in a
You're like
with
this, right? But
right,
then you deal with the corporate folks, and they're like in a separate. They're on Mars, right? And you're
right.
on, the Earth, right? I mean, I've been in corporations. I mean, it's bizarre. So officially, Toyota can't say anything because they have nothing really to say. Because honestly, most automakers don't comment on problems before it becomes a recall. They just don't. And even if it comes to recall, I mean, Jill and I have covered these recall stories many times. I'm sure Kyle has as well. They got nothing to say. It's like, all right, we're going to recall these many vehicles, going to fix it, be done with it, right? I mean, that's kind of the viewpoint on this. But I can tell you that unofficially, they have dived deep into numbers. And I honestly, I think from myself standpoint, I alerted them to the problems early on, and I've made it a bigger issue than it is because I kept throwing it in their faces.
Mm-hmm.
And for better or worse, they still talk to me. But for better or worse,
and like you make something, throw something in their faces. What?
Yeah, right. Me, so I mean, I've made it a bigger issue than it is because I do think that they need to respond, and they're trying to get me information. What I told them is that I don't want a number because anytime I get a number, it's going to be wrong. So if they tell me it's 25 trucks and it turns out to be 27, I'm a liar. If I tell them 25 trucks turns out to be 20, I'm a liar, right? So what they have said is in the single digits out of all the trucks being built on the market. And I think you're right. I think there was a time period, 3-4 weeks, where they had a bad batch of parts and they shipped them out. Unfortunately, in their plant processing, final line inspection, which is what they call it, they weren't able to identify that problem before it went out to the consumer.
Okay, I want to stop for a second because I want to make sure you're saying the right thing. You're saying in the single digits. So do you mean 9? Like 9 or under, or do you mean like double digits?
No, they tell me it's a low single digits. So in my estimation, I'm talking 5-6%.
Okay, percentage-wise. Are you talking about 9 vehicles? I'm like, what exactly are you talking about?
That's why Jill is the managing editor. So I mean, I'm talking single digit percentage-wise, and so you're looking at right now today. There's probably 20 or 30,000 Tundras have been built so far. So if you single digits, I mean, what are you looking at? So
200-300 trucks.
Yeah. I mean, you're looking at a very small percentage, and that's the big. I think what comes down to, though, the bigger issue is that, and from your standpoint, I agree with this as well. Is yours, and what we've seen is they all have failed within the first 500 miles. You think, Keith? Is that
roughly? I think the most I've heard from anyone was right around 1,000 miles, but most of them are first 500 miles.
Right, and so the overarching concern is, so they catch it in the first 500 miles. But what if they don't catch it? What if you get to 60, 70, 80,000 miles, it fails again, right? So that's an issue that you've had. You've asked for an extended warranty, which, by the way, Toyota, you need to give them an extended warranty. I'll keep making videos until you do. So I mean, you've asked correctly to say my truck was in the shop 36 days. Can you just give me a couple more months of extended warranty? I mean, that's fair, right? I think that's very fair. The other thing I think that's really interesting in the story is that, and I have gotten blasted on this, which I think is kind of bizarre, is that you had your truck in the shop, and there's 2 ways to repair this problem. So, Jill, you've popped the hood in these trucks these days, right?
No, Jill, when I can see over the hood, right?
Right. So Jill's the size of my 12-year-old, actually a little bit smaller. Jill, do you imagine you can climb in the back of that engine bay and actually work on a turbo?
No.
Right.
Yeah, better question. Can I reach the dipstick?
Right. I mean,
no.
Trucks got taller, and the engine bay has gotten smaller, right? Yeah. And so the question, I think the really interesting part of this whole conversation came down to, how do they repair the problem, right? And so there's been pictures online showing the cab off the frame, and there's been and Keith showed me the repair process was to remove what we call the front clip. The front clip is going to be your front fenders and your front grille, and that allows you access around the engine. Now, they did take yours off the engine mounts, and somehow magically moved it a couple inches forward to get access to turbos, which still I'm still doing this deal because I've worked on engines before, and that's pretty remarkable. But
yeah, I don't even know. I was trying to have them explain it to me because I said, okay, what did you remove? So they removed, like you said, the front clip. They took the air conditioner, the radiator off, and then I think I sent you some pictures of it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can see the engine mounts, and it's just a couple inches. I'm not even sure how that happened. The other thing that was kind of interesting after I got it back and had a meeting with the service manager and the tech that actually did it, I was originally under the impression when I had talked to them right after this happened that both turbos were being replaced. I thought it was both. Ended up only being one. And Toyota had told them that only one is going bad, which is the passenger side. So that was new information to me. And again, that is coming straight from the tech. So I don't know if that's gospel or not, but that's all they replaced on mine. So, you know, the story kind of changed. And again, if you go to what I originally put out in my video, the day that it happened or a couple days after, I was told, you know, it's a whole new manifold. It's both turbos. It's all this stuff. And, you know, it's only popping the cab for the most part. That's, you know, again, that's what we had originally heard. And over that 36 days, it evolved into something else. And I think again, coming from not a car guy, in terms of I'm you know, I have no real mechanical ability. I can change oil and things and rotate tires is about as far as I go. But you know, when you see that picture of the cab popped or the engine pulled, and you're like, this truck has 300 miles, and I really don't like this. It may have been coming from a place of, again, ignorance, because I don't know how these things work, and I'm just like, wow, you know, it's never going to be right again. This truck will never be right again. And, you know, again, it's kind of a learning thing, you know, over the past month as you talk to people. And it's funny, the old school guys are like, that truck's done. It's trashed. You can't take a cab off a truck. And the younger guys are like, yeah, this is how they're designed. It's cool. We do it all the time, you know? And so, you know, my first conversation was with kind of these old school guys like, yeah, once you pop the cab, you might as well just junk the truck. So, you know, that's where I originally came from was, you know, this is a horrible way to fix a truck. And again, it comes from a place of ignorance originally, and I've just kind of learned over time. I still don't love it, you know. I still don't love it. I wish it didn't have to be that way, but that's the way it is, you know. And like you said with the extended warranty thing, you know, as I've kind of evolved over this and kind of learned how this all works, that's my thing is, if you're going to stake your reputation on reliability, which is why I've bought Toyotas for all these years, because I never was one of those people that had to worry about it's 10 degrees outside and I push this button, is the car going to start? It always did, you know, so that's why I wanted it. But if you're going to stake your reputation on reliability, then make me believe that this truck is now going to be reliable for 70, 80,000 miles. And the only way I'm going to believe it after what it's been through is you extend my powertrain warranty to take care of any future problems, because otherwise when it hits that number, it's gone, you know, because I just don't have that assurance, I guess, that everything will be right. And it probably will, but you know, you just need that. I'm in the insurance industry. I need a policy that says in writing, we're going to take care of you if something happens. That's what I do every day, you know, so I kind of want that from them. You know, and the other thing that you and I talked about, and again, I've learned, you know, companies don't talk to the customer like they should. I think when you make a $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 investment, I feel like I am owed a little bit more than the basement level customer service guy at Toyota corporate headquarters that doesn't know my problem and doesn't really care. But unfortunately, that's the way the industry is. And I know you and I talked, and you said, well, you know, luxury brands are a different beast. And I said, yeah, the only other vehicle I've ever owned in the last 15 years other than Toyota is a Volvo. And it's a whole different world of service. And I kind of got used to that because that's my daily driver for the most part. And, you know, they drive 100 and some miles to pick it up to do an oil change. You know, I mean, it's crazy. And my local dealership couldn't even return a phone call, you know, ever. And that's where I was really. So I think the failure happened on multiple levels, and why I was so upset, because I know in my business, if I don't provide that level of service that people expect and what they're paying me for, they're going to go to some other insurance company. And with this dealership, there's good people there. The service manager was nice. I know a couple of the salespeople, pretty good folks. But the general manager just ghosted me the whole time. Wouldn't even really talk to me. And some of the other people there, the service writer, I couldn't get him to call me back, for anything. So that's where the frustration went. People are like, why aren't you staying out there beating on the door every morning? And I'm like, I'm just not that kind of person. I'm not going to make a scene and scream and yell, but I did expect a little better service. And when that didn't happen, that's where the frustration, kind of boiled over. So, I mean, if there's anything for anybody in the car industry to learn from this in the industry, is the expectations of customers have changed over the years. And when we're making this kind of investment, we just expect a little bit more, and maybe it'll never happen. Maybe in my lifetime, I'm never going to see it happen. But, if you're buying $100,000 Ford Platinum truck, you want a little more love from the manufacturer and the dealer, I guess is what I think. So.
Yeah, I mean, and Jill and I talked about this extensively, is that and I've made videos on this, and I kind of pointed it out, is that if your truck costs $30,000, your expectation of service will be different than $60,000. And that's what I said to you. I said, people, and I learned this when I got in industries, people actually buy luxury brands, not just for safety features, but for the better customer service. You go to a Lexus dealer and they take your car, they give you a cup of coffee, you sit in a nice waiting room, put your feet up. You go to a Toyota dealer and they're like, there's a magazine in the corner and the Coke machine kind of works. Right?
I mean, and the TV's been stuck on the same channel for 23 years and the logo's burned into the bottom right-hand corner. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but the reality of things is that things have changed so much that, and I want to bring Kyle in this a little bit, is that Tesla's gotten hammered in this as well. I don't got to speak for Tesla, but that service has become such a big aspect of the buying decision that the expectation is that trucks have changed so much and the price becomes so much differently that we expect more from that purchase.
Hey, Keith, why, and forgive me for not following the situation from early on. I have heard of your situation, but not every detail. Why don't you just lemon it? I just looked up Ohio is 36 days in the shop consecutively, and it might be end or 3 attempts to repair. Why didn't you go that route?
So I have discussed that, and that's still an option open to me as far as the lemon law, because, a lot of people say, no, they've got to make 3 attempts. It's like, not in Ohio. So in Ohio, it's 30 days out of service, and you can go the lemon route. Talking to an attorney and a few things, they're like, our concern here is it's not like they were working on it for 30 days. It sat on the back lot for probably, 33 of those 36 days just waiting on parts. So it's not a ringer of a case, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
But because, everybody's going to blame it on part shortages. So, I still have that open to me, and I can tell you if there is another issue with it, I'm going straight that route. I mean, and I kind of jokingly told that guy, I'm like, if I get home and there's a puddle of antifreeze on the floor, like, I'm going to my attorney before I even come see you. So
here's the keys.
Yeah, it's done. So it's still open to me. You have up to a year to file that claim. So there was no reason not to take the truck back. I have a lot of friends that give me a lot of great advice, and one of my buddies is like, I'd have thrown the keys back at him and said, new truck or else, and it's like, well, I can legally still take this truck in and pursue the lemon law later on. So it's open to me. I just haven't decided what I'm going to do there yet. And the thing is too, and Tim may have a different driving experience, because like I told you, I refuse to watch any Tundra videos for the last month, but I love this truck. Like, I like the driving experience. It's quiet. It rides great. It's got a ton of power. And, the features are night and day over what my 18 Tundra had. And, that's the thing that's hurt me the most. It's just so weird. And I mentioned this on another video. I'm an Ohio guy. So, there's a lot of Joe Burrow fans. I live, 20 miles from Joe Burrow's hometown. So, but it would be like Joe Burrow calling a Cincinnati Bengal fan and be like, thanks for all your years of loving the team. We don't need you anymore. And that's what hurt me from Toyota. It was like them saying, thanks for all your years of business. I showed up to buy this truck in a Toyota shirt. My son had a hat on and socks. We're like fanboys. We're Toyota dorks. And, it hurt me to put out all this stuff like, man, I'm really upset at Toyota. But that was the other thing. And I hope they get this fixed and they can restore confidence in all the owners out there that have bought this truck. Because I think it's a really great truck. I think the platform, is going to go over to Sequoia and some of these other things. I think it's a good truck. And so I hope that they move on from this. And I hope I move on from this and, can continue buying Toyota products from now on. So I hope, but we'll see.
It's a very interesting story. And I thank you for being on. Cause I like getting to know you and your truck buying purchase and the reasons behind it. And going through the process. I mean, you've been through the highs and lows of this whole experience.
Right, the highs and the lows and the lows and the lows. And the lows.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not been a great buying experience, but I think it's interesting to consumers to understand this. And, you always have those naysayers are like, hey, don't buy the first model year, don't buy this, whatever. But, when the truck has been so fundamentally changed versus the prior generation, you're going to want to buy the new one. I mean, you're going to want to buy I had a 14. I've driven every generation since I've driven 15, 16, 17, whatever. And driving the 22, I mean, it's a completely different truck.
Yeah. There's not I think Mike Swears said there's not a single bolt that they reused from the old truck. I mean, it's 100% different. But, the last thing I'll say, when I have had that comment on my videos 1,000 times, at least, literally 1,000 times. Never buy first year production. And I had the 07 Tundra, which I think was the first year for that with the 5.8. I had an 05 4Runner. That was 05 or 06. Whatever year they changed generations there. I had a 10 4Runner. I had a 16 Tacoma. That was the year it went to the 3.5. So, and I think that was an 8-speed versus the old 4-liter 5-speed. So, I mean, I've had plenty of first-year production Toyotas and never once had a problem. I mean, and it wasn't just, some people are like, oh, those were cosmetic changes. No, that in my wife's new Highlander, yes. But in that Tacoma or those other examples, that was an entirely new powertrain, and never had a single problem. So, as a consumer, I've had this track record, with first year production runs. And like you said, it's new. It's what, it's all this stuff that I'm looking for, as a consumer. I want the new tech and cause I like it. And so, I was an early adopter. Like I said, the day after that reveal video came out, I was calling dealers ready to order. So that's, I have no problem being an early adopter because I just had that experience that it was going to work out okay. So
really good stuff. I want to transition to Kyle. Will you hang out a little bit? We'll talk about EVs. I know you're super excited for it in Ohio. It's coming.
Yeah.
Because there are charging stations on every corner in Ohio, just like there are in Chicago.
Yes.
You can find them everywhere. In Chicago either, by the way.
Really? Yeah, I live in rural Ohio, and maybe Kyle's going to talk about this. I mean, in where we live, I think there might be one in the county. So that'd be a fight on a daily basis to get to that thing. So,
All right. So let's bring in Kyle. So people don't know Kyle. A little background for you, Kyle. Would you mind sharing a little bit of information on who you are and what's going on?
Yeah, well, I think first things first, I'm not like I am an EV nerd, but I'm not EV only. I love combustion stuff. So that my heart lies.
So don't hate on Kyle.
And
I apologize.
So I'm not Mr. EV, but I have driven EVs for years. I've covered them on our side. So certainly, geek out with that stuff. And I think it's interesting to cover it because, in your world, in the pickup truck world and SUV especially, EVs probably have their worst use case because you have such heavy use vehicles. And of course, you already brought up the charging conversation, which I'm happy to talk about, share my opinions. It's not all good, by the way. There's no perfect solution here. I'm not here to be one of those guys. I try and take a pretty objective approach to this stuff. So am I a vegetarian? Someone asked in the comments. Absolutely not. We're going for steaks after this. Like, I'm not your typical EV guy here. So background, I'm a YouTuber on over here. I used to work for some OEs. I worked for Tesla in the past, but mostly just been covering electric cars for the last 4 or 5 years on YouTube. We have a collection of channels. We're here in Colorado in cold weather. We push cars to their limits, and that's what we do every day. It's pretty fun.
And that's why I like having you on and talking to you, is that you have, unlike other people that cover IVs, you have a very grounded approach. You understand, you're not such a fanboy, I should say, and you have a really good understanding. And you have a Mercedes-Benz, right? Did you have the diesel van?
I have a Sprinter, which I drive all the time. One of those overlanding 4x4 things. I mean, I own combustion cars and electric cars.
Right. So, I mean, it's great to talk to you because you have both spectrums. You're not like EV's the future, the only way to go, but you're like, hey, there's limitations, what's going on. So I want to bring you on because I want to talk to you about the news made this week, and we're still working on our story. We're working into the details on this, but we have the GMC Hummer EV that made headlines that weighs more than, the battery itself weighs more than a Miata. Which it's kind of, it does. And so it's a 9,000 pound vehicle, which is the Tundra. Keith raised his eyes. So the Tundra weighs between 5,300 and 5,600 pounds, what the curb weight is. And so the Hummer weighs 9,000 pounds.
Which, by the way, is about 3,000 pounds more than the old Hummer H2 SUT. I just want to point that out because I think that was 6,614 pounds. I have that number in my head, right? But because I was just like, that's 3,000 pounds different. That's the battery difference. So they have the battery, then they built the whole truck and just like it was on top of it.
Right. So they haven't lost that gas guzzler version of
it's like the Hummer of EVs. They're true to form. It's going to be super inefficient. It's going to chug all the juice. You'll plug that thing in, everyone else's lights will turn off, and
throw the switch, Igor, throw the switch, right?
I mean, it is truly going to be the Hummer of EV. What I don't quite know is, we've used the term gas guzzler for years. How are we going to call electric juice guzzlers? I don't know how we're going to phrase this.
I don't either.
I mean, I guess it would depend on where you are drawing your electricity from, but I'm sure there's some kind of a coal argument or something in there.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. I think at the end of the day, Hummer EV certainly can talk about it. I think Hummer EV is an interesting truck, but it's not really meant to be a work truck. This has very low payload capacity, probably can tow, but again, we can talk about the range conversation with towing. We can talk about thermals with EVs and towing and charging station design. But yeah, it's going to be, I like this electric sucker. Someone said in the comments, that's a good one. So,
I think what's interesting is we have Keith, who's an insurance guy, and you have kind of covered stuff. And so what has come to the comments a lot in the channel is, what about that battery? So with a gasoline engine, we know that replacing a gasoline engine, right? So it's going to be, depending if you go LS3, whatever you said to do, right? You're going to be several $1,000s to replace an engine. I mean, that's the heart of the ICE. But with these batteries now, and I know it's a weird conversation because battery pricing comes down, and over time, the idea is batteries are this expensive, but in 20 years will be this expensive, and there's stuff going on. But guys are really nervous about this. They want to know, they expect the battery to die at some point. That's what guys like me, we anticipate failure, right?
I mean, that's a very positive way to enter into a relationship. I expect it to fail.
I've been married. Yeah. All right. So anyways, we expect to fail, right? We expect it to fail. And we know in a gasoline engine, if it fails, we understand that replacing an engine, we know what the cost is going to be. We have an idea of what's going to be. But I referenced this in a few live streams ago, and I still love this video. This guy in Norway had a Tesla Model, I think 3 or S, first edition Model S. And the battery was going to cost $20,000 to get replaced. Instead, he lit it on fire and had TNT guy blow it up.
That was awesome. That was so cool.
So he blew it up. Yeah, if you've seen this, the video is awesome. He found a YouTuber who does explosions in Norway. They blew it up along this rock side. It is the best video I've ever seen on YouTube. It's just freaking awesome. But,
That's excluded under insurance claims, by the way. If you purposely damage your own vehicle, we're not paying for it. So
that was one of the best things I've seen on YouTube. Yeah. So why don't you guys give me 1 second, because my lights keep turning off, and I'll be back and I'll give you a whole thing on.
I'm like, speaking of electricity, everything's flickering. The Tesla gods are angry. Yes, they're like,
right. The Teslarati is out in force. You can't speak badly about us. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what happens, right? So, it's funny. So,
all right. So you want to get into what happens to batteries and what failure points and stuff. So, and we can talk about that Model S situation there too. You're not wrong. Everything will fail. The battery pack will fail at some point without question. And so, it comes down to how much is it going to cost to, replace it. And the thing is, today is I think a little bit of a different situation from what we'll see in the future. We're just, for example, if a Model S battery pack has a fault inside of it, whether it's a short or something like this, you'll go to Tesla, they'll say, hey, we're just going to swap a new one in there, and 20 grand is what we're seeing. Every EV in the US will have at least an 8-year warranty on it. So you're good for 8 years. What happens at 8 years and a day? I think the thing to remember here is batteries don't just fail instantly. And usually it's one component of the battery pack that will trigger the whole thing to die. And what we don't have today are independent shops in mass that are comfortable opening up battery packs and fixing a singular component, at least with lithium ion technology that's out there. And so we hear stories of packs that just need, expensive replacements. A Hummer EV pack, I can't even imagine. It's going to be $40, $50, $60,000. I don't know. I'm spitballing, because it's 240-ish kilowatt hours of just, raw energy. It's crazy expensive. So yeah, that is a concern. Are there going to be shops that are going to fix an individual component, or when you bring it into your GMC dealer, they're going to say, hey, you got to put a new battery in this thing because we're not going to open it up. And the thing to keep in mind is that the battery packs will always have some sort of inherent value in there, because it's not like the energy storage just goes to zero. It's typically, again, a fuse, a bus bar connection, wire taps on top of the batteries that will fail. And usually it's just one module out of 10, 15, or 20 modules that goes, and the rest are fine. So I think we'll see especially as EVs become more popular, a trend towards fixing rather than replacing. I actually don't know of one case in my mind where, we have this sort of just batteries dead, gone. It's always a singular component that, is there someone qualified in your area to fix that, has always been the issue. So in terms of degradation, of course, batteries will lose their ability to hold charge over time. And so, yeah, I'm actually doing some long-term testing on this myself. We have lab data, but I'm running a Tesla, beating the crap out of it, literally trying to destroy the battery pack. We just crossed 103,000 miles on this car of fast charging, track use, heating it up, everything we could possibly do. And I'm about to do the final test on it later this week to see the degradation. But at 100,000 miles, we've lost about 10% of the capacity on that particular car. And so that, to me, doesn't seem too bad. It's also not towing up steep grades every single day, pulling big trailers, heating it up to 50 degrees Celsius constantly. So yeah, the battery question there isn't a full answer yet. It just depends on your situation in that given time. Is there someone around to fix the component? Can someone do a module swap? But yeah, it's going to be expensive either way, because battery packs just cost a ton, especially in trucks, because we're talking north of 150 kilowatt hours for a lot of these, and yeah, big dollars.
Do you see that EV vehicles are becoming, dare I say it, throwaway pieces of technology, like DVD players have become, cell phones become, TVs become, where like there is no repair anymore. Like once it gets to the point the costs are so prohibitive to fix it, you're just gonna junkyard it and buy something new.
Maybe. I mean, I think cars are going in that direction in general. It's hard to say, what the recyclability of them is going to be. EVs are still new. We don't have the infrastructure in place to fully recycle them easily in all parts of the country at the moment. So it's something that, let's take a Tesla Model 3, for example. There's a million of them everywhere in urban environments. Those cars eventually are going to have an inherent value on the parts market, in the battery market, on the used, that will probably outweigh its usable working value as a total vehicle at some point, with some mileage and some wear and tear. So yeah, it's very possible that that'll be the case. But I think the battery is the least wear component based off of my experience. I really think that's it's the last of my worries when buying an electric car. It's the last of thing that I think will break. I mean, you're probably going to have interior wear issues and potentially driveline issues before the battery pack just, goes kaput. And again, that theory of the battery just dying isn't really a thing, at least with current technology.
Well, and another thing I know a lot of people bring up all the time is the idea of battery degradation. And so, people, I think, have this fear that I'm going to own this vehicle for 3 years. And, in the first, year that I have it, I'll have 400 miles of range. And then the second year that I'll have it, I'll only have 300 miles of range. And then, by the time I get to my third year, I'm down to 100 miles of range. What's the point? And I know that there's been a lot of work done from, on the OEM side and research and development on, stopping that degradation. I feel like when Toyota was talking about their upcoming EVs, they were saying like after 10 years of ownership, they only expect maybe I think a 10% degradation of the battery, which wouldn't really eat into the range at all. So, I mean, can you talk about those kinds of fears and are they realistic or what does the future hold in terms of battery degradation?
Yeah, well, I think early electric cars, we're not talking 1800s, we're talking modern early electric cars. Like if you look at a Nissan Leaf, right?
Yeah, the original
is one of the most dreadful cars on the planet. But if you look at an early Nissan Leaf, those cars are actually showing significant degradation based off of where the cars are in the country. And those cars, and this is going to become much more of a topic, especially with trucks, is thermal management of EVs. And those were an air-cooled system. So you would plug them into a fast charger. They would accept a ton of power. They didn't have any way to cool the battery packs. They would live in and sometimes deep into the red zone. And definitely battery degradation on those vehicles were extreme and still are. Versus you see a Leaf in the Northeast or somewhere in Minnesota, and it's like, things still running great. With today's technology, you can, first off, automakers have learned they're much more conservative with this. And of course, there's great thermal management in a lot of current EVs where you can just drive it, do whatever you want to, and it doesn't matter. Like I said, we've really tried to do this Tesla abuse test for 100,000 miles and a lot of fast charging in a lot of very hot weather. We're talking over 120 degrees on many occasions of fast charging, and it just doesn't care. It'll derate itself to protect it. But
does that matter how it's charged? Like coming from a non-car guy, if you're somebody that is going to use your EV all the time and you're going to use a fast charger daily, does that accelerate the degradation of the battery or because I know my son and I play with RC cars and it's still lithium ion batteries, but if you trickle charge these batteries, they'll last forever. But if you fast charge them, you start having problems with them a lot sooner. Is that what you see here also?
Yeah, it's roughly, I would say that's an accurate statement generally. Yeah, 100%. If you charge at home, which I expect most people buying an EV, at least today, will probably have some sort of home charging because it's really difficult to drive an EV without home or workplace charging, almost to the point I wouldn't do it personally. I wouldn't go and take an hour out of my week to go charge a car at a fast charger.
You don't have the free time. I'm shocked.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, I have all the time in the world. My boss is super understanding. He wants me to go sit at a battery.
Yeah, you really just need some sort of home charger, and even a wall outlet, not for trucks, but for passenger cars, actually is probably fine for most people's commute. If you have a, less than 50 mile per day commute, just a wall outlet's good. But yeah, heat kills, and DC fast charging is going to heat up the battery pack more repeatedly under more stress. So generally, the slower the charging, the longer it's going to last. But there are, 4 hours of extra in that.
So the questions popped up in the comments a few times, and I have been looking at this as well. I am an EV skeptic, I think is a good way to say it. I've been cautious. I am buying an EV truck. Damn it, stop it. I am buying one. But the question was about solid state batteries. So, is that the future? And I guess for those who don't know, what is a solid state battery? A, and B, what is that a future thing? We're going to start really. Is that the silver bullet solution?
Yeah, I'm not a battery chemistry expert to the point where I can explain roughly the difference, but there's great seminars that you can listen to about what a solid state battery is and different types of solid state batteries. I think, in my experience covering EVs for a long time, having driven a solid state battery electric car and a few other things, lithium ion technology today, especially in these large packs, actually really is quite good. And there are some benefits to solid state depending on the chemistry makeup. And a lot of it comes to actually safety from fire prevention and things. It's something where in EVs it's already pretty low, but that certainly will bring it lower. Yeah, the Bolt situation was not a good one for GM at all, and for the owners that had to deal with it. Thankfully, I think it was small numbers, but still not good. Basically, what it comes down to after talking with a lot of automakers, a lot of suppliers, and I was just with a supplier the last few days that's very heavily involved in EVs. There's no magic solution coming on the horizon. We're kind of sticking with the technology we have, at least for the next 10 years plus in mass market. I don't expect, sort of big scale when we factor in weight and also your sizing capacity of what you can do with a battery pack. Lithium ion is just the best and most cost-effective option for the foreseeable future.
So I have lots of questions. So I'm trying to narrow these down to just a couple. But I am curious because now, were you living in? So let me say this differently. You worked at Tesla in SoCal, right? Is there in California offices, right?
No, I was on the East Coast for that.
Okay, so now you're in Fort Collins, and you're in snow, and you're in altitude. Mm-hmm. So does snow and altitude kind of change the EV conversation?
Yeah, cold weather is hard on your car because there's two things working against you in the cold with EVs. And the first is you have less battery capacity in total. So a downside of lithium ion technology is in the cold, you kind of can't stuff all that energy into the pack. And we're talking maybe 5%. It just depends. The second is you got to burn a lot more energy to heat up your cabin and your battery pack, because not only, like I said, you got to heat up a combustion engine, because that would heat from the actual firing process. In an electric car, you just got to burn electricity to keep the battery kind of warm-ish, depending on what you're doing with it. And there's a couple ways around this, especially, again, if you have home charging, you can pretty much precondition the vehicle from your wall outlet, which will, in some cars, it depends on how they're tuned, heat up the cabin and heat up the battery-ish from the wall, so that when you do unplug, it just has to maintain its temperature. And there's a lot of thermal mass in battery packs and also in your cabin. So it doesn't seem to be that huge of a deal in the real world with preconditioning. But I would say, on short trips, especially where you're constantly heating up the cabin and then you're parking the car and it's got to do it over and over, yeah, you'll see 20, 30% loss of range in cold weather. But on a long road trip, like where you're towing or you're going on a trip across the country, maybe 10%. Once it's warm, it kind of just stays warm.
Interesting. So I shared links to Autospec reviews and the Trigger Happy as well. So make sure you follow those channels. I feel like, and I know Jill and I have argued about this, I feel like EVs are become like, anytime I turn my email, I get 10 more emails about EVs of the future, and EVs you better buy now, and it's the way it's got to be. And I'm just a little bit over.
So you want to know can I tell you the biggest problems I see with EVs and pickup trucks? Because this is something I struggle with. As a heavy user of vehicles, personally, I think I'm going to be having a diesel in the garage for a long time to do heavy loads across Wyoming, towing a car, bikes, whatever I got to do. The first is thermal management. When you're towing with a heavy load in an electric vehicle, it's got to keep itself cool under long, strenuous circumstances. And again, maybe I'm swayed because I live in the Rocky Mountains and I got to tow up I-70, but like this thing's got to pull a lot of weight up there, and you can spike heat your inverters, your motor, and your battery pack over a period of time. And the cooling system needs to be sized for it. We recently learned on F-150 Lightning, the Mack trailer towing package will double the cooling capacity for the motors and the battery pack. So that's an option. If you're going to tow, I recommend everyone's specs. It doesn't change any suspension. So it seems like automakers are already thinking about this, and that may not be the biggest issue, but the next is the charging situation. It's your efficiency, your range is more, I would say, impacted by the size of the trailer, aerodynamic drag, than the weight. The weight does have an impact, but I think even the aero on the highway makes even more of an impact on the range. Once you get that momentum going, you're good. And I've done tons of towing tests with EVs, but never a truck EV. So I'm looking forward when we get some electric trucks on the road. And I actually drove an electric truck the other day. I'd be happy to talk about it. So the range is going to be significantly decreased on our trip, which means you have to charge more often. Charging stations are not designed for trailers in America at all, like almost none. You're going to have to block a Walmart parking lot to plug in a truck. It's going to be a total disaster charging on the public network with a trailer, unless you're traveling through the middle of the night when traffic's low. In my opinion, I think this is our biggest challenge. Not only do you have to charge more, you have to charge really deep into the pack. And a lot of people who are new to electric cars don't realize that they charge really fast down low from 0 to 50%. And a lot of them, all of them, taper down the higher you have to charge. So when I road trip an electric car, for example, I charge from, I try and get as low as possible between 0 and 5%, charge it to 50, 55%, and hammer down to the next station, plug in, and that's the fastest way to hop your way across the country. But with a trailer, you're going to need to charge 70, 80, 90, 95% at these chargers. And we're talking about long charging times and frequent charging. It's going to be a real tough challenge, I think.
Yeah, so I was curious about this. I'm glad you brought it up. So you were with Magna, which is an aftermarket supplier, and I saw a video of my friend Andre from TFL like braving the side roads to see you guys get some video of that driving. But you're talking about a heavy duty, was it Silverado or Sierra they had?
Yeah, Sierra 2500.
Right. So I mean, you basically drove the only electric Sierra that were allowed to drive. I know automakers have these at their proving grounds. They got all sorts of contraptions. You guys talk about like, I want a supercharger with a 6-speed transmission. They have it. I mean, these guys, they bolt on whatever and they give it a run. I mean, they try to get it right. These engineers. But so what was your experience driving this 2500 electric truck?
Yeah, it was interesting because, I went in with the same skepticism that you probably have. I think EVs are great for daily driving passenger cars. Honestly, I would be annoyed if I didn't drive an electric car every day because I can do a burnout out of the garage. I plug it in. I don't think about it. It's fine. With truck, this is difficult. So, we really didn't have enough time to evaluate. But I will say is what Magna's working on is an interesting solution where they've focused massively on the thermal problems of the motors. So they oil cool the motor and they water cool the motor, glycol cooling the motor. And so the gear train and the rotor and stator and inverter are all sized for sort of 60% of peak load consistently, just wide open throttle. So when you do a Davis dam test, which is a J2703, whatever it is, basically most electric cars would probably just thermal derate to the point where it couldn't maintain the speed of 45 miles an hour that test is rated for. But this system should do it no problem. So it's solid axle. It's not going to work in any independent truck. So you're not going to see this in an F-150 or a something like that. It's 25, 35, 4500s, maybe even up to some medium duty where we get the 55, 6500 stuff, which I think would be cool. And they're just providing the powertrain, and it is sized for continuous heavy load. And I was impressed with that.
It is an interesting discussion to have because Jill and I talked about this as well. As in the cities get pretty loud, right? And so taking that medium duty, taking that stuff, making electric instead, the same sounds difference. But from a guy who drives a diesel to go to electric heavy duty, what was the visceral driving experience like? Did you miss the sound of the engine?
Yeah, I'm lucky. I get to drive all the new trucks too, and so all that, I love that stuff. And you give me a straight 6 Cummins, I'm happy because that thing sounds freaking rad at wide open throttle. Right. No, I enjoy the sound of electric motors too, and to be honest, I think it's kind of a fun challenge for me as a nerd to figure out the charging and maximize this and maximize that. It's perfect for inner city use where you come back to a centralized fueling station, where fleets have the perfect application for heavy duty trucks, medium duty electric trucks, and honestly, even, standard trucks like an F-150 Lightning. For your average consumer, an EV still to me feels kind of limiting in a truck scenario because you buy a truck to do whatever you want and you don't know what that truck's going to do every single day of its life. And so I think it's perfect for fleets. They'll sell every single one they can make. But for a consumer who has to do, long distance towing, it's going to be difficult, even for this application, I think.
we're at such a what was the Mary Berry's word? I think she said inflection point. I think we're at this point where it's like we're just at this weird spot in history. We have people that like, so for example, Keith's standpoint, right? So like, if the Tundra was electric, it would be no wastegate issue. Wouldn't exist, right?
But there would be another issue. We just don't know what that is yet.
Right. Jill, the optimist, says another issue. But I mean, that's the theory, right? That, like, it's in the comments all the time. People love EVs because less moving parts, and you don't have the same issues you would an ICE engine. I do think that my fear with all these vehicles is not the engine. I think the engines are fine. My fear is everything you add on the engines and all the copper wiring. I mean, I happen to have had experience working on old 1960s Chevy C10s. I will tell you that copper wiring is the bane of my existence. I add new grounds to everything I work on because the damn wiring goes wrong. And then you have situations in the news where rats chew the wiring up, and they destroy it. So I think it is fascinating. I haven't heard anything from Tesla or anything from EVs yet, where if the rats chew on the wiring, the car doesn't start. Because in the truck side, we see that stuff all the time. I know not in Jill's world, there's not as many rats there in the country, but
actually, the rats are the size of cats in Chicago. What are you talking about?
are they eating your pizza? Is that what the deal is?
They're not eating my pizza, but yeah, they're really big. Like, I'll be in the alley, and you'd think like there's a cat running across the alley. No, it's a rat. It's like this big. They're huge. They are huge in Chicago.
I mean, that's been my concern the whole time, is additional features plus copper wiring just seems like a recipe for repairs. It just,
I think time will tell. We'll see. I'm not sure the copper wiring itself is the issue. More, how is it integrated? How is it, done from a long-term perspective? The 60s are very different than today. So we'll have to see how this, plays out. I'll say from the passenger car side, wiring has not proven to be an issue. Truck case, very different use case than a traditional passenger vehicle. For some people daily drive these trucks and don't ever put anything in the bed and tow with them. I know plenty of people that have, a F-150 Platinum and they just daily them, and an EV truck will be perfect for that. I think it comes down to, from my perspective, there's enough use cases, there's enough people where they will sell every single electric truck without thinking about it for the foreseeable, near-term future. When it comes down to fulfilling every single need that a truck buyer may have, electric certainly is not there, and it may not be there even for me at this point.
Do you see? Oh, we all got questions.
Sorry.
Questions. Well, I mean, kind of building off of that, do you see then like more the EV trucks becoming more of a lifestyle vehicle and less of a functional? I'm going to go tow stuff, haul stuff, do stuff with my truck. So less of a work truck, more of I'm making a statement truck.
So overall, yes, I think EVs as a work truck may work better than a combustion truck in low range scenarios. We have a lot of lakes by us, for example. So you got a lot of boat services or services that put boats in the water and pull them out. EV's great for that because you got all that torque. It doesn't care. You can go wide open throttle. You're not wearing any components really by doing that. The approach with launching an EV truck, which is they're basically saying, hey, we're not a work truck. We're not designed to be doing huge. I think it tow 11,000 pounds, which isn't bad for a unibody construction truck. But that's where I think we're going to see it going for the meantime. I think a lot of F-150 Lightning owners are going to overland build them out. Here in Colorado, again, I'm swayed because everyone's got a lifted 4Runner and everyone has a Rivian order and stuff like this. But I really think that's the right approach for daily driver with a little bit of fun and adventure, play around with the charging, push the limits. Again, if you're going on an adventure, going away from a charging network is an adventure in some kind. One I actually personally
will he make it?
Yeah, I love
make it to his destination.
Yeah, I love that. And so we're actually planning an electric trip from the tip of South America all the way to Alaska, not using any combustion generators or anything like this. So the full Pan American Trail, not cheating like the guys in the movie did with the Rivian in that Apple TV series. So long way up. We are going to try and do it properly. It'll take a couple years to plan, but that's what I get excited about, pushing the limits. But yeah, look, you're not going to see a dude who has a high country 3500 who lives in Wyoming with his ranch ever switching to electric within the next 5 to 10 years, in my opinion. In Keith's case, though, I could see, living in an urban-ish environment, although you did say you're out in the country, you have a house with a garage.
I'm in God's country. Let's put it that way. Yeah. I'm in the middle of nowhere. Yeah.
You live within, 200 miles of a major highway, I'm sure. So I think, for you having one, so having one charging station in your garage is actually fine. You don't need any other chargers around if you have a charger at your house. And then as long as you have one with a 200-mile radius to get you out of town, then you're good. And that's
what you think the range is? Because that was my question. As a truck buyer for years, I was thinking about, in my head while you were talking about this, we take a trip to North Carolina every year, and we always take my truck and we fill it full of fishing gear and beach gear and everything else. But it's also a town in the middle of nowhere on the beach, on the Outer Banks. There's no charging stations there either. So, what is the expected range of the Ford Lightning? I mean, if I get to this town, am I plugged into a 110 for 3 days to get charged back up to leave? I mean, how's that going to work?
Yeah, I think it comes down to how you manage it. Like I knew I lived in North Carolina for years, so there's DC fast chargers in Duck now. So you basically would go there, you top up, do whatever you need to do. It's relatively low speed, nice weather conditions generally. You'd probably we did an EV test in the Outer Banks, and I think we were projecting.
Yeah, I'm wearing my Outer Banks shirt. I mean,
sick.
Yeah, yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're doing 35 miles an hour up and down the road. You could go in a Lightning probably like 400 miles at that speed, if not more, just cruising along, because they love low speed, just consistent cruising. My Tesla we have a video of it doing like 140 watt hour per mile, which is just sipping juice. I know that doesn't mean much to most people, but, sort of low speed cruising, that's the best case scenario. So it all comes down to how you manage it. It comes down to, you stop at the last DC fast charger, like you would stop at the last fueling station, top up the truck, and continue on. That's just something you get ingrained in yourself. And after driving EVs for 10 years, I'm used to that now. But look, it's not as easy as gas. I think a lot of EV or evangelists, whatever you want to call them, are like, this is the best thing on the planet and everyone should drive one. And it's so easy. Look, I can go everywhere. You kind of can go everywhere. I've driven across the country in EVs 20-something times. But it takes a lot more work than just filling up with gas and not thinking about anything.
I mean, it is interesting stuff. I mean, there's we still have challenges in infrastructure. We still have challenging charging times. I mean, there's still conversations about, people always tell me, well, you just stop at the gas station, get a cup of coffee. It's about time to charge EV. I'm like, no, it's not. Like I go in, I pee, gas, go.
It just depends on the car, because we're starting to see EVs like iX5, EV6, Porsche Taycan that can go from 0 to 50% in 10 minutes flat. And again,
charging station, you got to clarify that, because those charging stations are like one in a blue moon. Yeah. And I've seen an Ioniq 5 charge in literally, it was like 15 minutes, and it went from like 5% to 80% in 15 minutes. It was beautiful to watch. But I mean, those charging stations, I mean, they're in California. I don't know that they're in Chicago. I don't know where they are in the rest of the world, but they are few and far between. Just because the capability is there doesn't mean that people have access to it.
You're absolutely right. So they're actually along all major highways with Electrify America. What you need to look for these stations are 350 kilowatt stations are the ones that can supply the power. There's a great app. All of your viewers can download it. It's free. It's a sort of a crowdsourced thing. This is called Plug Share. This is just my area here. You can look up what type of chargers you need, what type of car it is, and it'll show you every charger in your area. And if you drive an electric car, every EV driver has Plug Share. It's how I live.
Plug Share lies.
Yeah, so it's like Waze for EV owners. You find a charger, you add it to the map, you check in. It's pretty, right? Maybe you don't need it as much, but early days this was everywhere, and it has every charging station pretty much. Along major highways, you'll see every Electrify America station has 350 kilowatts. We did New York to LA in the Taycan and broke the Cannonball record. Every single stop except one was 350 kilowatts, all 28 of them. And there was just one that was supposed to be, they didn't have the power, it was 150 kilowatts, but it was being installed. So there's a lot more, but in inner city use, there's not. And so Jill's absolutely right. When you go around Chicago, there are no DC fast chargers. There are some, but not great. They typically are unreliable. and they're pretty slow. They're usually 50 kilowatt units at best, but mostly you're going to find level 2, 6, 7 kilowatt units.
They're broken. They're snowed in.
Yeah.
I went on a journey last winter to find a charging station, and literally everyone I went to was like plowed in, and I'm like, that doesn't help me.
Yeah, and this is a problem we're seeing in winter, even here in Colorado. So I totally agree, Jill. I'm with you. The charging situation sucks. I think you have a charging station at your house. I saw your Ford Escape plug-in video where it was preconditioned.
Oh, no. That's just my 110 volt jack in my garage.
Sorry, I just saw it plugged in. So yeah, I mean, look, for your situation, living in inner city use, what the majority of the money on charging stations has been spent on getting you from urban area to urban area, with the expectations that you'll stop at a hotel with a charger or your house with a level 2 charger. Again, early days. We're transitioning to more mass market where there's a lot of people who live in apartment complexes. There's a lot of people who live in inner city areas with small garages like Jill, who may not actually have the power available to put a 6 or 7 kilowatt charger, depending on the situation. And this is why I say it's really hard to own an EV without home or workplace charging at the moment, because driving around looking for chargers is a pain in the butt. But use PlugShare. It's so much fun to look at different areas, different types of chargers, look at the speeds that you'll find. And I think that's definitely better. There's even more issues when we get into making fast charging profitable. That's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah, so a few comments I want to speak to in the comments real fast. The cost to charge up an EV is ridiculously cheap compared to gas. So
it just depends on where. At home, yes. Right. On the road, actually comparable at fast chargers.
Really?
Yeah.
So I mean, I want to make sure we hammer that. There's also questions about where the electricity comes from. Again, depends where you're at in the country. Here in Nebraska, and Wyoming, we use a lot of coal, but even then, it's 50% of our energy generation. You get in the West Coast, it's mostly hydropower and wind power. So again, it just depends where it comes from. Coal is actually, what's interesting is I saw this the other day, and I actually go in, folks, and I read the EPA reports, I read the Clean Air Act reports, I'm on reading this stuff all the time. I have friends who work for the railroads, and we live on coal in Nebraska, and I'm keeping an eye on this stuff. And coal has consistently become less and less part of the energy mix, and we're going to see more and more of a variety of energy mix. And my understanding of it, I don't know, Kyle may speak to this as well, but as far as renewable energy goes, to me, that's still a sometimes energy source. And so we can figure out how we can store the power and be able to use that on like a, so like if it's an overcast day, how do we get more solar power and electric into the grid? And currently we don't have a solution for that. So that's
even worse than that is controlling grid frequency with renewables. Renewables aren't consistent. So it's really hard to balance out your grid load. If you have a huge share of wind power, like Denmark had this issue. And actually the building that I'm in was partially funded by Denmark's energy crisis because they put too many renewables in, and then it was fluctuating and they were losing power. And so they needed peaker plants and battery storage and all this crazy stuff. But to your point about coal, which is really, a lot of people tell me, hey, coal, whatever. Even if you charge an electric car, fast charge an electric car completely on 100% coal, there is less total carbon emissions from doing it that way. I've driven EVs through West Virginia for years because that's where I used to live on the East Coast and would travel out. The guys love it when you pull up in an EV because they're like, you're buying our electricity, you're buying our coal. Thanks for supporting us. And so I'm not like a crazy environmentalist personally. I love electric cars because they're really freaking fast and fun to play around with. And, I just love doing things a little bit differently, but a lot of people are in them for environmental benefits. And even if you do charge on coal, there's plenty of studies that will show it technically does have less carbon emissions doing it that way than even fueling up.
Right. And long-term, I've always heard wheel-to-wheel emissions from EVs are less than gasoline engines. And with looking at where they're getting the minerals from for the batteries, that's changing as well. Used to be the kids were digging the mines and like some Indiana Jones looking like mine. They're trying to dig in this going on. But I mean, the South Africa, like, blood diamonds, that kind of stuff is changing.
Yeah. What I think is kind of cool about an EV when you try and track like the total carbon footprint of the vehicle, which again, this isn't where my interests lie, but right. I've been trying to get into it a little bit more. You pretty much have a set, certainly no question, it takes more energy, more resources to build an electric car on day one. But you're instantly starting to make that back as you drive it. And I've heard estimates anywhere from 5,000 to 15,000 miles of driving to sort of offset that initial bump, and then you're in the plus. So don't buy one and crash it every 3,000 miles and total it out, because that's not good for the environment, I guess. But what's cool is you sort of have your initial carbon that went into the vehicle, and that's it. There's no more. And then you can perfectly track where your electricity comes from if you're a nerd, and then you can create your full carbon picture of the vehicle. So it's something I'm going to be researching more, but it's not my area of expertise.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm with you too. I mean, it's something that I guess I'm being dragged in kicking and screaming, that I have to like learn more about these things that I don't really care so much about. But and I get it. I got one last question for you, and again, both of you guys, if you want to head out, I don't feel bad about that. But
I'm actually going to roll. It sounds like I'm having a hurricane here right now, so I'm going to take the dog out before I get blown away. So,
Nice to meet you, Keith.
Thank
Don't
you.
get blown
Hopefully,
away.
I survived the storm. So,
Yes.
Thanks, guys.
Fantastic.
Bye.
But
See ya.
I my last point on this, and last thing I want to ask you is you talked about EVs being fast. I've always thought that was the case. A lot of Tesla owners I've talked to, and yes, guys, I do have open ears. I do listen to stuff on forums and Facebook. Yes, Jill. And what I've always found is most guys, EV guys I've learned, are not, I want to say, the mix is pretty strong between environmentalists and performance guys and things that think it's cool. So nerds and environmental people, right? It's kind of a strong mix in EVs. But I got to tell you, after owning my Power Boost last year, I just got so numb to the driving experience. I just got bored. And I just wonder, from your aspect, when you've driven the ID4, I know you have a whole series of ID4 stuff, and you've driven the Iconic, and you've driven that kind of stuff. Do you have the same experience versus the Model S? So I mean, obviously going from a Plaid to an ID4 is a whole different animal.
I love the ID4 for like everyone else. I recommend the car. I think it works really well for certain people. I think the Ioniq 5 works really well for certain people. They're not for me. I'm a Porsche Taycan, let's go sideways in silence kind of guy. So that's, I've been driving Teslas. I've had, the P100D, the fast stuff. That's
right.
what I'm into. So, ludicrous mode launches and that. I'm not really a Tesla fanboy. In many ways, I'm actually not into Teslas. But I do think their charging network is what keeps me, having one in the garage, because it's just effortless. And they built this out. And again, I've been road tripping before the supercharger network even existed. So to watch that unfold and everyone else fall behind. Even today, if I were to hop in my Tesla, I can get to Salt Lake City across I-80. I go up to Cheyenne and over in a CCS car, which is the global, or I should say the American standard for charging now pretty much. I have to go down to Denver, over the Rockies, and up to Salt Lake, and it adds like 6 hours to the trip because there's no fast chargers in Wyoming. And so that's why I've had a Tesla. I actually use it for road trips more than daily driving. I daily drive an electric smart car because I think it's silly and my license plate's dumb and people make fun of me. But but that's just what I bomb around town in with the dogs. But for me, ID4 is a boring experience. But I think most people are commuting, in Nissan Versas, and they're driving, Volkswagen Tauses and Tiguan's, competitor vehicles internally. And they're just cruising. They're not loving the 1.6 revving out to 6,000 RPM every day and maximizing your shifts. That's fine. Go buy an EV. It's perfect for that. But when you launch a Plaid, it is pretty spicy. I got to say, it's pretty fun.
Yeah, I just find the whole experience interesting. I mean, I've always thought with this job, it's like, hey, get in the car. You love to drive, but we're going to make it EV so you can't hear it. They're going to make it semi-autonomous that drives itself so you can't drive it.
Well, you can drive it, or you can choose to have the car do lane centering. It doesn't drive itself. A lot of people think that. Don't think that.
Right. I mean, I had to drive an hour south to use the Ford Blue Crew system.
Right.
This was my comment about you not living near a major highway, by the way, Tom, Tim, is the fact that you had to go all the way down to Cheyenne or whatever just to get to a highway to use the
Blue Crews. Yes.
Yeah.
So I had to drive down to Kimball, which is on I-80, which is one of the small towns, Nebraska, to use the Blue Crew system, because I honestly want to test it out, because I've driven Super Cruise, which is his GM.
You had the King Ranch that's in the fleet. Did you do that with? Yep. That's a good truck. That thing's nice.
Yeah. And on the spec sheet, it said Blue Crews. And it's funny because our colleague, David, who works at
he had no idea it had it.
He had no idea. He's like, what do you mean it's got it? And I'm like, I'm going to go test it. So my friend and my 75-year-old friend and I drove to Cheyenne with it to have lunch with Aaron Turpin, who's in Cheyenne. and it was a bizarre experience.
Yeah, and maybe that was your first time doing something like that. The thing with, I mean, we could talk. You want to do a driver assistance show? The thing with Ford is, they used HD pre-mapped highways to enable hands-free but eye tracking. And what you can do with Ford, which you can't do with Super Cruise, is you can still do lane centering, but not on pre-mapped highways. So it will still try and keep yourself in the middle of the lane, but you need to put torque into the steering wheel. Whereas Super Cruise won't do lane centering unless you're on a pre-mapped highway. So I like that Ford was like, you got to touch the wheel or you can go hands-free here. What Tesla does is all vision-based, where there's sort of no restrictions as to the roadway. It just looks at the lines, but it's similar to Ford where you constantly have to touch the wheel. It doesn't do any eye tracking. So Blue Cruise is definitely a step ahead, where they're like, you don't have to touch the wheel in certain areas. But be ready to take over, because again, we're early days of this driver assistance stuff, and it's not perfect. And really sketchy if you trust it too much.
I added a few gray hairs in that trip over here and over there. But I mean, here's my question though for you on that, is that I didn't know what to do. Like,
what do you mean?
It's driving itself, and so
you just chill.
People make fun of me all the time because in the Super Cruise and the Blue Cruise video, I've done this. I've twiddled my thumbs because.
Come on. What do you do when you drive? You pay attention to the road. That's what you do.
I know, but I want to grab the steering wheel. I have no idea what to do with these.
Well, then just drive. Just grab the wheel.
I don't know. It's bizarre. I set my arms crossed. I just
no, that's not good, because you're not ready to take over the wheel.
I don't know. I'm so confused what I'm supposed to do with this stuff.
Like, hands on your lap if you have to, or be like me, talk with your hands.
Yes.
That's a great opportunity to talk with your hands, is using Blue Cruise.
Yeah,
just gonna put that out there.
For me, lane centering is a necessity to have on a car to do road trips with. I spend a lot of time on the road traveling, so I just love it to take over and do the shoots. There, my lights went off. We must be near the end of the podcast then.
But I was going to say we're entering into hour 2 of the podcast, so the lights go out in the city apparently.
This is a 20-minute timer.
Yeah,
I've been in gyms like that where I'll be like on a treadmill, and they're on like a 20-minute timer or a 10-minute timer or whatever, and I'll be like running, and you're only in one place, and the sensor doesn't pick you up, and it'll be dark outside, and I'm running on the treadmill, and all of a sudden the lights go out, and I'm like, I don't know what to do with this, and I'm like waving my hands, and nothing. So I have to like get off and like run around the gym and then get back on the treadmill. That's
Yeah, this is when efficiency goes too far. It gets in your way. And it's a genuine relation over to electric cars too. Someone said EVs are like an appliance. Couldn't agree more. Great daily driving. You just drive them. You don't care about them. Beat them up. Charge it when you need it. And then have your manual transmission, something fun for the weekends to really get the emotion going. That's what I do. And for me, that works the best for my situation.
The irony of talking about EVs and the power goes off just kills me.
Well, it's just a little motion sensor over here. But again, I think that leads to you just spending time with them. Like, Tim, you should come down. We'll go on a trip in my car and see what it's like. I mean, let's take it up to Wyoming. Let's get it in cold, and so you can experience this stuff firsthand, because it's not as bad as you would think.
No, I know I'm old and cranky, but you were on my list. I have to make a trip to TFL. Roman, who listens to this podcast, thanks for listening, Roman. I want to make it down to his ranch, because I'm really like his ranch. I'm in love with the thing.
I can't wait to see their off-road course that they designed.
Right. And so I need to make it down to Kyle, because we talked about pulling the smart car behind the Tundra and the funny things, Kevin, with that. So we have a lot of stuff going on. I want to transition to the last point in this podcast, live stream, whatever, because I have to pack my bags because asked in a sand.
Somebody's getting up at 2 a.m.
Yeah, I got to.
Are you flying out of Denver?
Scottsdale to Denver, Denver to Tampa.
Okay, cool. So you don't have to drive all the way to Denver.
No, I used to drive all the way to Denver. So people to understand is that for me to Denver, I figured it out. It was 4 hours from my front door to the front door of the plane. And that basically included, dropping off luggage and going through security. It's kind of what I figured it out to be. So getting down there, I'd take 10, 11 o'clock a.m. flights. Wasn't a big deal. But when you land from these events, like Chicago Auto Show we went to, and you get back at 8 p.m. at night, you've been out drinking 2 nights in a row, that is a long Long drive.
You may want to stay at our house. We're only an hour on the way to yours.
Right. So, yeah. So there was long nights, window down, hand out the window, slap in the face, keeping awake on the way home.
Singing to music. I don't know.
There was a lot of that stuff going on. But yeah, it was interesting. But yeah, so I have to make it down. I definitely want to see your space down there. You're at the what'd you say, the college there. They let you have some space there, which is just awesome. But I want to transition to Chicago Auto Show because we were just there last week and we didn't talk about it, but we are all three were there last week. And Chicago Auto Show is a really great consumer show, really good for consumers to come in and check out vehicles. But what was interesting this year was that there's usually McCormick Place has two major halls, and we're fortunate we stay in a hotel attached to the hall, which is fantastic. Like, I don't want to walk down Detroit River in January ever again in my life.
We don't have to go outside. We stay in our bubble.
I mean,
best thing ever.
Yeah, it's the best thing ever. But in this show, there was only half of the halls.
Well, and I always mix up the halls, but it's like the North Hall and the South Hall, and I think the South Hall is the bigger hall. And the North Hall. So originally, when I first started writing about cars back in 2001-ish, it was only in that hall, and so they expanded into the North Hall, which is a smaller hall. It's like half the size of the South Hall. And they kind of spilled over. And initially, when they spilled into that hall, it looked really empty. And then, like, as the years have gone on, like, people are putting test tracks in and people are doing build outs. And then you have the Subaru display that has puppies. And so, like,
wait, puppies are great though. That is the best part of the whole show.
I love the puppies. But you know, and so, like, the space gives people it's like when you move to a bigger house, you fill out the space, and then, like, you have to move, like, whenever, and you're like, where did all this stuff come from? But yeah, this year was a little bit pared down. You didn't have Honda or Acura there. Mazda wasn't there. BMW was a dealer installation, so, like, nobody from BMW National was there. I'm, like, trying to think who else wasn't there. Those are the biggies that we're missing, I think. Honda, Acura, and Mazda. But it was just
Mercedes wasn't there.
Yeah, well, Mercedes hasn't been there for a few years now.
Oh, it was my first Chicago show, so I didn't know what to expect.
Yeah, no, Mercedes hasn't been there for a few years. Porsche wasn't there. And Porsche usually is there, so that was new.
I don't know if Audi's typically there, but they weren't this year.
They are usually there. So yeah, like, a lot of the luxury automakers weren't there. But I mean, keeping in mind, Chicago is I like to call it the meat and potatoes auto show. Because, I mean, it's your trucks, your SUVs, it's, you know, what people are buying in the Midwest. And but I loved all the activations that they had. I think they had 6 indoor test tracks. They had the ability, and I should say it's still going on right now. It's going on until Monday. They have test drives available. So, you know, if you're interested in cars, you can go down a level and do some test drives from McCormick Place. So but it was definitely smaller. I mean, bigger than last year, but smaller.
So let's do this round robin. So think about the couple of vehicles you saw at the show that kind of stood out to you, and kind of what you know. I know from my viewpoint, if I were to talk about it, you know, I know Ram had a smaller display, Ford had Lightning, Bronco to try and show off, which makes sense, right? So Toyota had the Tundra and Sequoia, and that makes sense, right? But I mean, you know, I dig through.
Wait, Tim, did you see that they had the new Sequoia right next to the old Sequoia?
They did.
That was the funniest thing on the planet. What were they thinking?
I will tell you that. So if you'll see it in our videos, so you'll see in different videos, YouTubers going out there, but or other journalists, I should say more accurately, is that the Sequoia, the older Sequoia, is next to the new Sequoia, and the Sequoia was the new one was on a turnstile, moving around, and the older one was sitting like down, like it was like the bastard stepchild sitting down in the corner, right?
It was show no love.
It was no love, and it honestly, it didn't have a good look to it.
No, it looked terrible. Like, why would they even bring that there to say, hey, don't buy the old ones on the lots, buy this shiny new one?
It is. It's like, look at what's coming. This is gonna be awesome. This is what you don't want.
Right. It was rather bizarre, the choice there. I mean, you know, I know we had journalists took different viewpoints in auto show. I mean, there's several of our colleagues that left early because there's nothing really to cover. We had a great time. We shot a ton of videos. I was watching your video on Lightning, I believe, Kyle. showing us on the menu screens. One of your colleagues, I don't remember the guy's name, but he was
Jordan
talking about,
was with me. Yep.
yeah, he was doing lightning with chief engineer. The chief marketing guy was there, and so I was watching that kind of stuff. So I mean, in your minds thinking back, I mean, besides the pizza and whatever we try to do, beer nights like that, and the bar that was open that we all congregated around. But I mean, what stood out to you from the show? I mean, it's to me, it was a fantastic display of how the automotive industry is changing.
Yeah, from my side, I actually thought it was great. I thought Ford, first of all, I think Ford's on fire right now. They had Raptor right up front. You walk in, you get Bronco Raptor on the display, looking nice and wide, really sweet. Then you get the Everglades right after it, then F-150 Lightning. So they're like, here's the best of our off-road adventure, jump it, combustion, sort of, although I wish I had a V8, but that's a separate conversation. And then, then you get F-150 Lightning right up there front and center. You had Supras when you walked in, sort of Toyota saying, hey, this is our cool stuff. They had the super concepts there. I loved this dichotomy, which is, everyday kind of vehicles we're starting to see with plugs going electric, something I think makes a lot of sense. And then sort of your specialty vehicles getting spicier and more aggressive and, speed and power. Although I really loved the e-Transit because I'm a van life guy. And I think, certainly that package does not work for van life. There's nowhere near enough range or all-wheel drive or anything like that. But I'm excited to drift the e-Transit and take it for a track test because I've track tested every electric conversion Transit up to this point. So we got to see how the factory one does.
You do that and I will be there because I'm a huge van fan. People don't understand. I think a mid-size Transit, like not the high profile, low profile, is actually the new mid-size pickup.
Interesting. Why do you think that way? It's
a lot cheaper, and mid-size pickups used to be really cheap. They used to be fuel efficient, right? So Transits are pretty fuel efficient, and it used to be you'd have to put a topper on it. RB, I know that had a old Ranger or Tacoma, whatever, would have a topper on the back. They use it for fishing or hunting, whatever, and the van basically does the same thing.
I'm a van guy too. I love them. I think they're great. But I will say mid-size truck from Ford is really lacking. I think the Ranger is probably one of the weakest points it's ever been, in my opinion, especially when you compare it to New Frontier, which in many ways is a really good truck. Mm-hmm. Tacoma looks amazing, especially in TRD Pro trim. And they can build great trucks. Maverick is insanely good. F-150 is insanely good. And then the Ranger's like, there is a new one coming.
Yeah, right. It's really leftover from Europe, right? So, they screwed up. Ford totally screwed up with the Ranger. They killed it and they blew it. But, look at what the Ranger can do and where it's at. I mean, to me, I've driven the Transit, the smaller Connect kind of size, and the doors. I mean, I'm a huge, what they call in the industry, egress and ingress, which is just BS terms for meaning you get in and get out, right?
Big guy in and out of the truck.
Yeah, I like wide doors. I mean, if you got into a commercial van lately, the doors are easy getting out of. The seating position is phenomenal. You're basically getting a full-size truck, right? So you're right there. And you have all the conveniences. They're adding more and more conveniences to, I should say, vans. And I just find them fantastic for the use case. Now, do they look as cool as the Tacoma? No, it didn't look as cool as Tacoma looks. But for people who are doing these things, I have so many Tacoma people that reached out to me. They're going overlanding with Tacoma. And I'm like, go buy a van.
Yeah, this is why we bought a van to cover because we started an overlanding channel, and as soon as spring comes, we're really digging into it. But we have a Sprinter 4x4, fully kitted out, but it sucks off road. We have no articulation. It feels like we're going to tip the thing over. I've got it up on two wheels off a ledge. That was pretty sketchy, but
I wouldn't recommend that.
Yeah, at least trucks can flex a little bit. You got some articulation. They're probably a little bit better suited, but we're going to put some suspension on this thing, mod it out, and see how it goes.
Yeah, it is interesting. So, Jill, your takeaways from Chicago, besides your boss being a jerk and forcing you to do a bunch of videos?
No, your videos came out great. It was wonderful. I watched you guys work together. It looked like really good chemistry, too.
It was good.
Understand that Jill was so excited on Friday. She literally ran laps around me and Jill. And I was like,
come on. I had my running shoes on. I was like, let's go. That's what we should have been videoing, is me running circles around you.
Jill, your TikToks have blown up as well. I see you on TikTok all the time.
It is, that was, so I had two videos that each had 1 million views each from the Chicago Auto Show, and I wasn't in either of them. They were simply reveals of the Ram like the sheet pull of the Ram 1500 with the Built to Serve edition, and then the Bronco Everglades, and the everybody shared those videos because they hated those reveals. So
hey, engagement's engagement, views
I
are
engagement,
views.
engagement.
Ford,
And I
Ford is the
commented,
worst on reveals.
that was a minute and a half to pull that effing sheet off. I just have to say. And people like the comment on that video was like, without much further ado, and then there's like more ado. Because it was like a minute and a half. But that was the general theme of the 6,000 comments that I got on that video. Was like, seriously, how long does it take to pull a sheet off of a truck? But other than me running circles around Tim and Phil and getting bruises in weird places, by the way, I have like a really weird bruise right here that I have no idea where it came from, but it had to have been from climbing in and out of something while we were doing video. But yeah, other than that, EVs, like they're like, I was really impressed with the amount of EVs that were there. I mean, it kind of goes back to the conversation we had. So I'd not seen the Subaru Solterra in person yet. And that was kind of, I mean, it's the same thing as the BZ4X from Toyota, but I hadn't seen that yet. So just kind of walking around that. The Silverado EV, like that is a cool, I don't want to swear, but that's a cool truck. I'll just but there's another word in there I was going to insert between cool and truck. Yeah, no, I think that was really neat. I wish I could have climbed around in that. But you know, Dana White wouldn't let us touch anything. Right. So he would like get in and touch things and move things around. But the screens look cool. And the seating position, I mean, he was 6'4" and got in the back and was able to like, you know, I mean, his hair was brushing the roof liner, but other than that, like it looked like he fit really well. And it's funny because like I got a couple of comments. They're like, no, is the front seat adjusted for Jill or is it adjusted for Dan? And I was like, since Jill couldn't touch the truck, it was adjusted for Dan. But yeah, I tried to call into the front. They wouldn't let me do that. But no, I would say the Silverado AV was probably like my highlight. Like I thought that was really cool. And I know a lot of people don't like the way it looks. It looks like an Avalanche, but I thought the functionality was cool. I thought not that I could touch it, but the textures looked really cool. You know, the screens, I thought, you know, everything they did, I thought looked really, really good. So to me, you know, that was one of the highlights. And then kind of walking around and seeing some of the other EVs on the floor. Like I had never seen the Kia EV6. And so, you know, walking around that and sitting in there and kind of looking at that was also pretty cool.
I will say the Iconic was there, the Iconic 5. Is that what they call that thing?
Ionic.
Yeah. Ionic.
Isn't it Ionic?
It is Ionic.
Don't you think?
And I got to be honest with you, a friend of mine had posted that on Facebook, I don't know, a day or two before, and I literally had to Google it because I had no idea what the hell the damn thing was. And so I saw it and I was like, oh, that's that thing I Googled. So I mean that it stood out to me because and I'm a bad journalist. Like I just get so focused in what's going on that I just didn't.
Don't ever say that in your out loud voice.
I know, I never say that out loud. But I am curious about the Silverado EV because we did 2 videos on that. So as people know, I have a deposit down, and as our news editor Jimmy asked me, he says, "Are you really going to buy it?" I'm like, "Yes, I'm really going to buy it." So I'm curious, Jill, are you getting involved in the ordering process with me? Are you? She's like, boom. She's, you know, so I mean,
Tundra, whatever. Silverado EV, sure.
So yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting. What I'm not doing the $105,000 first edition BS because I don't have money to burn. But you know, I mean, it is interesting. It's interesting that there's no tow hooks until you get to Z71. Now, Kyle, you do overlanding stuff with your Mercedes Benz. Do you have tow hooks in that van?
Not enough and not strong enough either. The van's not really. There are recovery points on it that I can hook to, and but honestly, we're gonna take the bumper off, put a metal bumper on, chassis mounted winch, the whole bit, and get, you know, a solid, you know, grab points on that thing that I would feel comfortable pulling a 10,000-pound van from. The thing is, that van's not really set up for hardcore trails. We have amazing off-road trails around here that we're building a Lexus GX 470 off-road rig to have long travel suspension and really beat it up on the trails. And we have a Defender this week we're going off-roading when the van can't do half the stuff I want it to do. And so the Rivian, we probably are going to get one. We have one coming to review in a few days now, and so I'm really looking forward to seeing how that does as an overlanding rig, because now you have a bunch of batteries to power all your stuff out on the trail. So that'll be kind of interesting.
Yeah, and kind of going back to hooks a little bit, do you understand the attack on tow hooks? Like, I'm confused by this. Like,
what do you mean the attack on tow hooks? Like, people are not putting them on?
Yeah, Tundra doesn't have any tow hooks, right? Silverado EV doesn't get until you do CV71.
Yeah,
right?
so the one thing that drives me nuts is with the Defender stuff, because we're driving one this week, I've been digging into it. You need like the top spec Land Rover Defender, the car that's like meant to go off road. All of them, you can't get recovery hooks, and it's $2,000 to put it on at the dealer.
$2,000 for recovery?
$2,000 to add recovery hooks from Land Rover. There's probably aftermarket solutions, but that's what they want for it.
Yeah, they're probably gold-plated recovery hooks.
So you're like halfway to just speccing it from the factory in the max trim just for that one option.
It is bizarre, isn't it? And so I just bought my wife a Ford Maverick, and
oh, nice.
So you go from $20,000 to $37,000 because you want to add heated seats.
Well, F-150 Lightning is like $10,000 for heated seats for the trim, right?
Well, I mean, is that ever been in history of automotive like this big of a difference? I'm just mystified by this whole idea. Like, heated seats, recovery points are now $10,000 to $20,000 options.
It's because everyone complained about ordering being too crazy, and the only people that are sticking to proper ordering guides are Porsche, because you can spec it any way you want. You can have crazy builds, but everyone else is packaging stuff, and look, it's all up to your market specific product planner that does your vehicle spec lists and options. So for different markets, for global vehicles, they'll all be spec differently. So go after your market specific product planner if you don't like the way the car is packaged with pitchforks.
Well, I got a shotgun right over there. Oh, I can't talk guns on YouTube. It's going to be a whole thing. I'm going to get demonetized.
Oh no,
content strike or something.
Right?
Really? I didn't realize that's a thing.
Yeah, it's a whole thing. But all right, so wrap this up. Thanks, Kyle, for being on. I really appreciate it, and we had a good time talking in the van shuttle back to the airport. And I do need to make it down there. I unfortunately I'm out of town when you have the Rivian. Are you having a Rivian all next week too? Is it just a couple days?
I'll message you about it. I don't want to give too much away yet.
Yeah. Mess me about it. I literally would drive down when I get back on whatever day I get back. Message me about it, because
I'm happy to do any collaboration, or if we can even film something for you, that's fine as well.
I just want to. The thing is with the Rivian, I just want to see it. Like, every time I've seen it,
you got to drive it.
What white gloves.
You got to get in this thing.
Yeah, right. You can't touch it, right? Just be careful with it.
No, they know when it's loaned to us. I said, look, we're beating it up off road. We're going to tow with it. It's going to have a rough week. And they said, that's fine. Do whatever you want. Yeah. Full confidence.
Yeah. I would literally drive down to spend some time with that, because I'm an EV curious is the term I'm using. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Leave your comments down below. EV curious. His lights are up. So we're going to let him go. But
I feel like I need a flashlight to put underneath my chin.
I have one somewhere. It was just right here. It's literally in front of my hands.
All right, so let me just throw this out. Some upcoming stuff going on while he's doing that. We have a live stream next week. Next Thursday we have a live stream, and then the week after we have 2 weeks of live streams, and then Jill and I are getting together. Jill and I are doing a road trip. And by the way, Jill,
Top 40 music, Tim. That's what we're listening to.
No, we're not. And I just looked at. I think I'm going to add another stop to our road trip in Dryersburg, Tennessee, on Friday. I think we're going to stop at Rough Country, which is an off-road, like they do accessory kind of company. So I'm going to have Jill in a truck for a week. God save me, please. And we're going to drive, and we're doing the work truck show. Have you done a work truck show before, Kyle?
I'm planning to go this year.
Are you planning to go this year? So we will see you in work truck show, because
Indianapolis.
I have this thoughts that I will be doing a video, and Jill will be in a 40-foot tall boom truck, and I won't be able to see her because she'll be up in a little bucket truck doing.
Well, it'll either be myself or one of my colleagues, but you'll see them.
Right. So we'll hook up with you guys there. We're doing the work truck show, so looking for that. So we have 2 more live streams. And I keep looking at that trip to Indiana. And by the way, teaser, I'm going to meet with Toyota to talk about the $1 million Tundra redo. So that video is coming out soon on that. And we have, I mean, I'm telling you guys, I have 16 videos, my video editor, and we have all sorts of stuff coming out for you guys, and collaborations with Kyle coming up soon, because I'm infinitely curious about this Rivian and stuff like that. So that's what's going on with the channel. The videos have been outstanding. You guys' support has been outstanding as well. And we had a lot of fun in Chicago. And yeah, that's all I got. Anything from you, Jill?
No, I mean, just it's going to be funny having you bring your truck to Chicago. I'll let you have first dibs on parallel parking.
What is this parallel parking? Gee, I got parallel park for crying out loud.
Wait, does your truck have the auto parallel parking in the Tundra?
No, because I'm a man.
Well, let's see you do it. I know. We need to beat Jill.
You need to see if you can beat me in my. If I don't know if anybody out there follows me on Instagram, but there is a really great photo of I parallel parked into a space that was like literally just as big as the truck. You should go and check that out because I was really proud of myself.
And yeah, everybody asked me about it. They talked to Jill about it, and I was like, "Good Lord!" Like I don't parallel park that often because there's I think there's 3 parallel parking spots in town. I don't do it that often, but I'm like, come on, I can do it. Like,
okay, yeah. I'm issuing the challenge. I will have my husband act as cameraman while you are parallel parking, and we have to find a similar sized spot though, because I'm not going to let you parallel park into a spot the size of a boat. That would not be fair.
Jill, I will just say this: I have really good insurance.
Good to know. Good to know.
All right, that's all for us tonight. Thanks to everybody for watching. As always, we will see you down the road.